The Book of the Secrets of Enoch. Chapter 4. Of the angels ruling the stars. They brought before my face the elders and rulers of the stellar orders, and showed me 200 angels who rule the stars in their services to the heavens, and fly with their wings, and come round all those who sail. Chapter 5. Of how the angels keep the storehouses of the snow. And here I looked down, and saw the treasure houses of the snow, and the angels who keep their terrible storehouses, and the clouds whence they come out, and into which they go. Chapter 6. Of the dew, and of the olive oil, and various flowers. They showed me the treasure house of the dew, like of the olive, and the appearance of its form, as of all the flowers of the earth. Further, many angels guarding the treasure houses of these things, and how they are made to shut and open. Chapter 7. Of how Enoch was taken on to the second heaven. 3 verses. And those men took me, and led me up on to the second heaven, and showed me darkness greater than earthly darkness. And there I saw prisoners hanging, watched, awaiting the great and boundless judgment. And these angels were dark-looking, more than earthly darkness, and incessantly making weeping through all hours. And I said to the men who were with me, Wherefore are these incessantly tortured? He answered me, These are God's apostates, who obeyed not God's commands, but took counsel with their own will, and turned away with their prince, who also is fastened on the 5th heaven. And I felt great pity for them. And they saluted me, and said to me, Man of God, pray for us to the Lord. And I answered to them, Who am I, a mortal man, that I should pray for angels? Who knoweth whither I go, or what will befall me? Or who will pray for me? And by angels, I guess, if they went the wrong way, they're jinn. Because in English, we're not quite clear. Just like in Arabic, you'd know. In some other languages, you'd know. But in English, this word angel, can be different things. But chapter 8 of the Assumption of Enoch to the 3rd heaven, 10 verses. And those men took me thence, and led me up onto the 3rd heaven, and placed me there. And I looked downwards, and saw the produce of these places, such as has never been known for goodness. And I saw all the sweet flowering trees, and beheld their fruits, which were sweet smelling, and all the foods borne by them, bubbling with fragrant exhalation. And in the midst of the trees that of life, in that place whereon the Lord rests, where he goes up to paradise, and this tree is of ineffable goodness and fragrance, and adorned more than every existing thing, and on all sides it is in the form good-looking and vermilion and fire-like, and covers all, and it has produce from all fruits. Its root is in the garden at the earth's end, and paradise is between corruptibility and incorruptibility, and two springs come out, which send forth honey and milk, and their springs send forth oil and wine, and they separate into 4 parts, and go round with quiet course, and go down into the paradise of Eden, between corruptibility and incorruptibility. And thence they go forth along the earth, and have a revolution to their circle, even as other elements. And here there is no unfruitful tree, and every place is blessed. And there are 300 angels very bright, who keep the garden, and with incessant sweet singing, and never silent voices, serve the Lord throughout all days and hours. And I said, how very sweet is this place. And those men said to me, and remember that Lord is probably Yahweh, which doesn't translate as Lord. That would translate as increasing existence, establishing. God is a noun and verb, but chapter 9, is the showing to Enoch of the place of the righteous and compassionate. This place, O Enoch, Chinvuk, I believe, Chinook, yeah. This place, well, I'll just say Enoch, but is prepared for the righteous, who endure all manner of offense, from that exasperate their souls. That exasperate their souls, who avert their eyes from iniquity, and make righteous judgment, and give bread to the hungering, and cover the naked with clothing, and raise up the fallen, and help injured orphans, and who walk without fault before the face of the Lord, and serve him alone, and for them is prepared this place for eternal inheritance. Chapter 10. Here they showed Enoch the terrible place and the various tortures. And those 2 men led me up onto the northern side and showed me there a very terrible place, and there were all manner of tortures in that place, cruel darkness and unillumined gloom, and there is no light there, but murky fire constantly flameth aloft, and there is a fiery river coming forth, and that whole place is everywhere fire, and everywhere there is frost and ice, thirst and shivering, while the bonds are very cruel, and the angels fearful and merciless, bearing angry weapons, merciless torture. And I said, woe, woe, how very terrible is this place. And those men said to me, this place, O Enoch, is prepared for those who dishonor God, who on earth practice sin against nature, which is child corruption after the sodomite, fashion, sodomitic, fashion, magic making, not the same as the art of science and religion, not the same as sleight of hand tricks, but they mean suture, or the tying the thorn to the head, the evil magic, the dealing with the demons, basically, enchantments and devilish witchcrafts. Witchcraft in European languages had nothing to do with, well, they're not Christian. No, it was always the people who worshipped the demons. Now, nowadays, people don't want to call it worshiping the demons. They want to call it, well, they're my buddies, and, or whatever they say. Well, I mean, it's not funny, but you know what I mean. They invoke them as deities. They evoke them into the magic circles and all that. And who boast of their wicked deeds, stealing, lies, calumnies, envy, rancor, fornication, murder, and who, accursed, steal the souls of men, who, seeing the poor, take away their goods, and themselves wax rich, injuring them for other men's goods, who, being able to satisfy the empty, made the hungering to die, being able to clothe, strip the naked, and who know not their Creator, and bowed to soulless, lifeless things that they treat as gods, who cannot see nor hear, vain gods who also built hewn images, and bow down to unclean handiwork. For all these is prepared this place amongst these for eternal inheritance. Chapter 11. Here they took Enoch up onto the 4th heaven, where is the course of the sun and moon. 6 verses. Now, some people would say the first heaven was, is the moon. And then you have those of Venus and Mercury as the first 3 heavens. And then you have the heaven of the sun as the 4th heaven. And the 5th heaven of Mars. The 6th heaven of Jupiter. The heaven of Saturn. And, so on. Those men took me and led me up on to the 4th heaven, and showed me all the successive groupings and goings, and all the rays of the light of the sun and moon. And I measured their goings, and compared their light, and saw that the sun's light is greater than the moon's, its circle, and the wheels on which it goes always, like a wind going past, with very marvelous appeal. Very marvelous speed, and day and night it has no rest. Its passage and return are accompanied by the 4 great stars, and each star has under it 1,000 stars to the right of the sun's wheel, and by 4 to the left, each having under it 1,000 stars altogether, 8,000, issuing with the sun continually, and by day 15 myriads of angels attend it, and by night 1,000, and 6 winged ones, issuing with angels before the sun's wheel, and the fiery flames, and 100 angels kindle the sun and set it alight. So instead of no rest, rapid transit. Well, perhaps that's another way to translate the term. Chapter 12 of the marvelous elements of the sun. And I looked and saw other flying elements of the sun, whose names are phoenixes and chakydri, marvelous and wonderful, with feet and tails in the form of a lion and a crocodile's head, and their appearance is empurpled like the rainbow. Their size is 900 measures. Their wings are like those of the angels. Each has 12, and they attend and accompany the suns, bearing heat and dew as it has ordered them from God. Thus the sun revolves and goes and rises under the heaven, and its course goes under the earth with the light of its rays incessantly. Chapter 13. The angels took Enoch and placed him in the east at the sun's gates. 2 verses. Last one's 2 verses too. Those men bore me away to the east and placed me at the sun's gates, where the sun goes forth according to the regulation of the seasons and of the circuits of the month of the whole year, and the number of the hours, day and night. And I saw 6 gates open, each gate having 61 stadia and a quarter of 1 stadium. And I measured them truly, and understood their size to be much, through which the sun goes forth and goes to the west, and is made even, and rises throughout all the months, and turns back again from the 6 gates, according to the succession of the seasons. Thus the period of the whole year is finished after the return of the 4 seasons. And whether we're talking about the ones that really go back far in Africa, or we're talking about the stone circles of the megalithic culture in Europe, which that actually goes back further than people realize too. Stonehenge and stuff is not actually Stonehenge and Newgrange aren't actually the first, but and then you have the lodge and symbols and stuff. But 14. And they took Enoch to the west, and again those men led me away to the western parts, and showed me 6 great gates, open corresponding to the eastern gates, opposite to where the sun sets, according to the number of the days, 365 and a quarter. Thus again it goes down to the western gates, and draws away its light, the greatness of its brightness, under the earth, for since the crown of its shining is in the heaven with the Lord, and guarded by 400 angels, while the sun goes around on wheel under the earth, and stands 7 great hours in night, and spends half its course under the earth. When it comes under the eastern approach, in the 8th hour of the night, it brings its lights, and the crown of shining, and the sun flames forth more than fire. 15. The elements of the sun, the phoenixes, and the chalkidri, chalkidri, how are you supposed to pronounce that? Chalkydry, broke into song. Then the elements of the sun, called phoenixes and chalkidri, break into song. Therefore, every bird flutters with its wings, rejoicing at the giver of light. And they broke into song at the command of the Lord. The giver of light comes to give brightness to the whole world, and the morning guard takes shape, which is the rays of the sun, and the sun of the earth goes out and receives its brightness to light up the whole face of the earth. And they showed me this calculation of the sun's going, and the gates which it enters. These are the great gates of the computation of the hours of the year. For this reason the sun is a great creation, whose circuit lasts 28 years, and begins again from the beginning. I can't think of 28-year cycles of the sun. I can think of 18 and a half or something, but... I mean 16. They took Enoch and again placed him in the east at the course of the moon. The last one is 3 verses. This is 8 verses. Those men showed me the other course, that of the moon, 12 great gates, crowned from west to east, by which the moon goes in and out at the customary times. It goes in at the first gate to the western places of the sun, by the first gates with 31 days exactly, by the second gates with 31 days exactly, by the third with 30 days exactly, by the fourth with 30 days exactly, by the fifth 31 days exactly, by the sixth with 31 days exactly, by the seventh with 30 days exactly, by the eighth with 31 days perfectly, by the ninth with 31 days exactly, by the 10th with 30 days perfectly, by the 11th with 31 days exactly, by the 12th with 28 days exactly. And it goes through the western gates in the order and number of the eastern, and accomplishes the 365 and a quarter days of the solar year, while the lunar year has 354, and there are wanting to it 12 days of the solar circle, which are the lunar epochs of the whole year. And in parentheses is verse 4, thus too the great circle contains 532 years. And on to verse 5 through 8. The quarter of a day is omitted for 3 years. The fourth fulfills it exactly. Therefore, they are taken outside of heaven for 3 years, and are not added to the number of days, because they change the time of the 2 years to 2 new months, according to completion. To 2 others toward diminution. How many years is it that they add even 1 more day? I don't remember. And when the western gates are finished, it returns and goes to the eastern, to the lights, and goes thus day and night about the heavenly circles, lower than all circles, swifter than the heavenly winds, and the spirits and elements and angels flying. Each angel has 6 wings. Remember, in the Bible, that's a particular type of angel, right? It has a 7-fold course in 19 years. Now, the so-called altar stone of Stonehenge was 18.6 years. The cycles converge, and you can use the place to predict eclipses through different cycles and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was that stone was standing up, but it was bigger than the others. And but anyways, chapter 17 of the things of the angels, which it is impossible to describe. In the midst of the heavens, I saw armed soldiers serving the Lord with timpana and organs, with incessant voice, with sweet and incessant voice, and various singing, which it is impossible to describe, and which astonishes every mind. So wonderful and marvelous is the singing of those angels, and I was delighted listening to it. Chapter 18. The taking of Enoch on to the 5th heaven. 7 verses. The men took me on to the 5th heaven and placed me, and there I saw many and countless soldiers called Grigori, of human appearance, and their size was greater than that of the great giants, and their faces withered, and the silence of their mouths perpetual, and there was no service on the 5th heaven. And I said to the men who were with me, wherefore are these very withered, and their faces melancholy, and their mouths silent, and wherefore is there no service on the 7th? And they said to me, these are the Grigori, who, with their prince, Satan, who rejected the Lord of light, and after them are those who were held in great darkness on the 2nd heaven. Is it Sathaniel, which would be adversary of God, as opposed to what the Bible uses, the Shathaniel, continual scourge of God, rejected the Lord of light. And after them are those who are held in great darkness on the 2nd heaven. Ekankar speaks of this astral realm as like, but then they would say the causal would be the 2nd heaven to them. So they have causal problems, Ekankar people would say. But the astral, what people call the astral realm, where the demons are and that sort of thing. Well, there's more to the astral term than that, but that's often what people mean. And 3 of them went down onto earth from the Lord's throne to the place Hermon, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill Hermon. And the 2nd book of Adam and Eve, chapter 20, can be compared to that in a way. And saw the daughters of men, how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times of their age made lawless and mixing the giants born and marvelous big men, and of great enmity. And therefore God judged them with great judgment, and they wept for their brethren, and they will be punished on the Lord's great day. And I said to the Grigori, I saw your brethren, and their works, and their great torments, and I prayed for them, but the Lord has condemned them to be under the earth till heaven and earth shall end forever. And I said, wherefore do you wait, brethren, and do not serve before the Lord's face, and do not put your services before the Lord's face, lest you anger your Lord utterly. And they listened to the admonition, and spoke to the four ranks in heaven. And lo, as I stood with those two men, four trumpets trumpeted together with great voice, and the Grigori broke into song with one voice, and their voice went up before the Lord pitifully and affectionately. Chapter 19 of the taking of Enoch onto the sixth heaven. 3 verses. And thence those men took me and bore me up onto the sixth heaven, and there I saw 7 bands of angels, very bright and very glorious, and their faces shining more than the sun shining, glistening, and there is no difference in their faces or behavior or manner of dress. And these make the orders and learn the goings of the stars and the alternation of the moon or revolution of the sun and the good government of the world. And when they see evil doing, they make commandments and instruction and sweet and loud singing and all songs of praise. These are the archangels who are above angels, measure all life in heaven and on earth, and the angels who are appointed over seasons and years, and angels who are over rivers and sea, and who are over the fruits of the earth, and the angels who are over every grass, giving food to all, to every living thing, and of the angels who write all the souls of men, and their deeds and their lives before the Lord's face. In their midst are 6 phoenixes, and 6 cherubim, and 6 six-winged ones, continually, with one voice, singing one voice. It is not possible to describe their singing. And they rejoice before their Lord at his footstool. Chapter 20. Hence they took Enoch into the 7th heaven, 4 verses. And those 2 men lifted me up thence on to the 7th heaven, and I saw there a very great light, and fiery troops of great archangels, incorporeal forces and dominions, orders and governments, cherubim and seraphim, thrones and many-eyed ones, 9 regiments, the Anit, stations of light, and I became afraid. I became afraid and began to tremble with great terror. And those men took me and led me after them and said to me, Have courage, Enoch. Do not fear. And showed me the Lord from afar, sitting on his very high throne. For what is there on the 10th heaven? Since the Lord dwells there on the 10th heaven is God. In the Hebrew tongue, he is called Arvat. Is that Aruth? I'm not sure about that. So what's that mean? And all the heavenly troops would come and stand on their 10 steps according to their rank, and would bow down to the Lord, and would again go to their places, and joy and felicity, singing songs in the boundless light, with small and tender voices, gloriously serving him. And that Ekankar has some of this stuff too. You got the 10 heavens and different god names, although they talk about God like there's a different god for each plane or something. But that's also sort of Gnostic, isn't that? I mean, depending on if you're monotheist, polytheist, there's different types of Gnostic, right? There's anti-Jewish, anti-Christian Gnostics. There's ones that are of that field. There's ones that, I mean, it's not about whether you're pro or con this or something else, you know. Chapter 21 of how the angels here left Enoch at the end of the 7th heaven and went away from him unseen. 8 verses. And the cherubim as seraphim, you know, de'im, this is the plural, standing about the throne. The 6-winged and many-eyed ones do not depart, standing before the Lord's face, doing his will, and cover his whole throne, singing with gentle voice before the Lord's face, Holy, 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 Lord, ruler of Sabaoth. Heavens and earth are full of thy glory. Oh, how do you say that? Kadush, Kadush, Kadush. Yahweh the spout. Hashamim Waharts. Wakul. I forget. It's in Isaiah. When I saw all these things, those men said to me, Enoch, thus far it is commanded us to journey with thee. And those men went away from me, and thereupon I saw them not. And I remained alone at the end of the seventh heaven, and became afraid, and fell on my face, and said to myself, Woe is me, what has befallen me? And the Lord sent one of his glorious ones, the archangel Gabriel, Jibril in Arabic. I don't know what it is in Greek, though. And he said unto me, Have courage, Enoch, do not fear, arise before the Lord's face into eternity. Arise, come with me. And I answered him and said in myself, My Lord, my soul is departed from me, from terror and trembling. And I called to the men who led me up to this place. On them I relied, and it is with them I go before the Lord's face. And I saw the eighth heaven, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Muzaloth, changer of the seasons, of drought and of wet, of the 12 signs of the zodiac, which are above the seventh heaven. And I saw the ninth heaven, which is called in Hebrew Kuchavim, which are the heavenly homes of the 12 signs of the zodiac. I don't know if they would use the word Hebrew, but Aramea is what the language was called at the time. But this is a later version in Greek in their post, in the exilic period, they call it.